Assalamualaikum, and a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today is 19th of December 2020. Welcome to the Smart Incentive Webinar Series number 5, organized by Malaysia Productivity Corporation. So today the topic is the role of government in promoting the nation's competitiveness through incentive. So this is the Smart Incentive Webinar Series. So the title is on the role of government in promoting the nation's competitiveness through incentive. So we are very fortunate today. We have two esteemed panelists. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Ida Yasin. I'm from Putra Business School. So our esteemed panelists, we have two today, which is Professor Dato Dr. John Anthony Xavier, and we also have Dr. Mohammad Daniel Abdulrahman. So before we give the floor to the panelists, let me briefly introduce them. Of course, in terms of CV, they have a long CV, so let me briefly introduce. I would like to introduce Prof. Dr. John. He is the Vice Chancellor of AIMST University in Bedong, Kedah, which is at the north. For the non-Malaysian who is joining, Kedah is at the north of Malaysia, or border to Thailand. So previously, he was a visiting professor of the Putra Business School in Serdang, and prior to his move to academia, Prof. John was the administrative and diplomatic officer for 36 years in the Malaysian public service. So he served almost 40 years in the Malaysian public service. He also worked as a consultant for the government of Kuwait, Kenya, Sri Lanka, IMF, World Bank, Commonwealth Secretariat, so on and so forth, and also worked with various countries in this case. So he has published 6 books and over 30 refereed articles on law and public finance, because Dr. John graduated in law and also in economics, and he did his PhD in public expenditure management from the London School of Economics. So that's a brief introduction of Dr. John. Now let me introduce our second panelist, which is Dr. Mohammad Daniel Abdulrahman. Dr. Daniel holds a PhD from the Center for Integrated Sustainability Analysis from Australia, and then Master of Science and Bachelor of Economics from Universiti Putra Malaysia. So now he served Universiti Putra Malaysia as an academia. Dr. Daniel is very avid, an avid researcher. He published a lot of articles and also did a lot of consultancy projects, especially on research, either from public or from the private organization. So in this case, he has a lot of experience in terms of research in the country, especially on economics aspect. Okay, with that brief introduction, I would like to invite the first panelist, which is Professor Dato John. Dato John, you have about 30 minutes for the presentation, and then I would like to invite you. The floor is yours now.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Ida, for your very kind and generous presentation. At the outset, allow me to thank the Malaysia Productivity Corporation for kindly inviting me to sit in this August panel with Dr. Mohammad Daniel to share our thoughts on competitiveness, the role of government, and how incentives can help promote the nation's competitiveness. So to start off my, so basically my topic is the role of government in promoting competitiveness through incentives. I hope that everyone can see my slides. So we are going to cover.
We can see your slide, Dato.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you very much, Dr. Ida. We will talk about 3 main themes or sub-themes in this talk. I told Dr. Ida to cut me short because I tend to ramble along. We'll first see what is competitiveness. We talk so much about competitiveness. What exactly is competitiveness? And of course, then we go on to see why it is important. Of course, it is important. That is why we have been talking about competitiveness. And then we see how can the government incentivize the companies that are responsible for competitiveness. We must realize that competitiveness is all about the productivity of individual companies. Together, they comprise the nation's competitiveness. So when you say national competitiveness, it means that taken in totality, every company is highly productive. And because it is highly productive, it can compete successfully in international markets. So competitiveness basically relates to the ability to produce quality products, to be able to export more, and to attract foreign direct investment and talent. So competitiveness is exporting more, quality products, being able to attract FDIs and talent, because FDIs bring in technology, they create jobs, and they help prosper society. So we need a competitiveness which is underpinned by the productivity of our natural resources and our factors of production, labor, capital. And this competitiveness, if our companies are all competitive and the nation as a whole is competitive, it will surely attract foreign direct investments and foreign talent and skills, and that will promote sustainable growth, employment, and income, and it will translate into national wealth and national prosperity. So what then determines the nation's competitiveness? And I would like to use Michael Porter. He is the guru of management in the Harvard Business School, and he has come up with this diamond model that explains the quality of the business environment, which promotes the competitiveness of the firms. So we have on one aspect of the diamond, factor conditions. These factor conditions relate to natural resources, but if you don't have natural resources like oil that Saudi Arabia has, um, we do have some natural resources as well. Our soil is good for palm oil. We have good sunshine. We have oil. But beyond those basic factor conditions, for a nation to compete in the international market, it must have uh, advanced factor conditions. And these are high quality, specialized inputs such as skilled labor, physical infrastructure, administrative infrastructure, information infrastructure, digital infrastructure, science and technology infrastructure. So these offer the advanced factor conditions needed to promote competitiveness. And then we also have the context for firm strategy and rivalry. The more intense the competition among companies, the more competitive we become, because competition means companies try to lower their costs, produce better quality products, and that promotes the nation's competitiveness. And also the context for the firm strategy. Are our firms merely jago kampung, or are they going abroad? Are they sophisticated enough? Are they adopting contemporary technologies, Industry 4.0 for their manufacturing? And all these, so their business model, the technology that they use will determine very much the context of the firm strategy. And that will determine our nation's competitiveness. If you take the SMEs, 98% of all our businesses are SMEs, and if they are not tech savvy, high tech savvy, we are not going to compete in the global world. And then down below the yellow, related and supporting industries, we need to have clusters of companies co-located in one particular geographic location and supported by suppliers, logistics, research institutes, government promotion institutes. And if they're all in one particular area, then we are going to have a cluster that is highly competitive, because talent, supplies, logistics are so close by that costs can be kept down, for the greater competitiveness of the companies within the cluster. So these are competitors. Competitors co-locate themselves together with their suppliers in a particular geographical location. And one classic example is the Penang Electrical and Electronic Company. So we have a cluster of electronics and electrical companies. We have a cluster in Klang Valley. We have a cluster in Moa. So these are clusters of electrical and electronics industry. Then we also have clusters of furniture in Moa. We have oil and gas cluster in Pengerang, in Johor Bahru, in Johor. Then we have tourism cluster in Langkawi, Penang, Johor Bahru. We've got medical tourism clusters. We've got education clusters, especially in Iskandar, in the Iskandar region. So it is these clusters that help improve the competitiveness of the firms within those clusters. So we need to upgrade our clusters so that our firms can be competitive. And then we will go on to see what is the role of the government in all these. And of course, demand conditions. If our consumers are not demanding, if they are not sophisticated in their demand, asking companies to produce better quality products, new products, then our businesses are not going to be challenged and they will not be competitive. Take the case of the US. During the 18th, 19th century, people were demanding for better clothing, clothing that will last the work that they do in the farms. And what did we get? We got jeans because they demanded better clothing. People in America traveled very long distances from home to office, and they wanted quick lunches, quick meals, quick breakfast. And what did we get? We got McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, etc., etc. So because customers demanded it, firms rose up to the challenge, and they became a worldwide sensation. So all these four factors together provide a conducive business environment for companies to be productive, highly productive, and competitive, and accordingly achieve a global competitiveness that brings the nation to the brings the nation's global competitiveness and national prosperity. So how do incentives enhance competitiveness? Let's see how can the governments upgrade their diamond model. We said we need advanced factor conditions, we need clusters related to supporting industries, we need home demand conditions, we need to improve and upgrade our SMEs and cause a greater rivalry among them so that they are always challenged to enhance their productivity and their competitiveness. To know that competitiveness at bottom is all about productivity, being able to produce quality products at a lower cost. So for governments to improve the element of firm strategy, structure, and rivalry, number one, government must eliminate barriers to competition. We cannot have protected firms. We cannot have favorites. We must enforce antitrust regulations. And recently, I think we took Malaysian Airlines and AirAsia to court because they were colluding among themselves to increase the price. So we do not countenance this kind of collusion to create a monopoly situation. And of course, if the government can promote trade and investment, that will enhance the firm's capacity to produce more and to be part of the supply chain of MNCs, foreign investors who come to Malaysia to invest. And how else can the government incentivize consumers to demand better products? Well, the government can impose high standards, minimum standards that companies must fulfill in their production, and that will ensure better quality products, and that will create a demand overseas. So the government itself must be a sophisticated buyer. They simply cannot buy anything that the industry produces. They must set high standards. I want this, I want that, I want this particular specs. And if the government does that, then companies will respond to become more sophisticated to enhance their production capability and to introduce better technology. And in terms of clusters, the government must promote clusters of competitors in a particular geographic location and help these people who are agglomerated in a particular geographical location by attracting suppliers and logistic firms to support these competitiveness. And then they can help develop testing labs to ensure that their products meet the high standards of foreign purchases. And of course, to do that, to promote research, development, and commercialization and innovation, the government should incentivize industry university cooperation. And of course, factor conditions, the government should encourage the creation of specialized factors, skills, digital infrastructure, ICT, R&D, roads, transport, bridges, railways, etc., etc. So if the government does all this, we'll be able to upgrade the diamond and then upgrade the overall conditions for competition, and we will be able to be increasingly competitive. So what incentives are we talking? So this is what I was talking about in terms of clusters. So we have core manufacturers, and then we have suppliers. We have related industries. We've got training and research institutes. We've got public-private partnerships. We've got industry associations. We've got the Penang state government also involved in providing the environment for the Penang electrical and electronics cluster to be among the best in the world. Then we also have federal government coming in to support them. So at the core, we have the manufacturers, but they are all supported by venture capitalists, suppliers, government, research institutions, government support, etc., etc. So we need to promote this. And so how are we promoting related and supporting industries? Bank Negara offers a lot of incentives. It gives finance for the services sector to have better working capital. It finances high-tech and innovation-driven SMEs. It also provides finance for micro-enterprise facilities. In fact, it provides finance for all economic sectors, agro-food sector. It provides finance for automation and digitalization. And Penjana offers financing for tourism companies. So, and all these help in bringing about a better set of related and supporting industries for the respective clusters, be they tourism, be they E&E, be they food, be they manufacturing of medical devices, be they aerospace clusters, whatever they are. SMEs comprise 98% of all business establishments, and the government provides them cheaper financing to help promote their businesses, so that we will have an upgrade of the related and supporting industries for the betterment of the environment, business environment, and for national competitiveness. FDIs are coming down. It is predicted that worldwide FDIs will decline by 40%, and Malaysia, it will decline by half that of 2019. So we said we need FDIs to bring in better rivalry, to bring in talent, to bring in their technology, and therefore how do we get FDIs to invest in infrastructure, skills, and R&D? Of course, we give them a lot of incentives, mostly in terms of tax breaks, and we will see later what are these tax breaks. So what are the incentives? Well, we have pioneer status, so you get a 10-year incentive where you don't have to pay taxes. And in promoted fields such as R&D, tourism, hospitality, manufacturing, training, and R&D is important because it brings about innovation, and that relates to the specialized factor conditions. It relates to the related and supporting industries with better R&D, better innovation. The companies themselves can upgrade their productivity. Then we have duty exemptions on imports of raw materials and components. Again, trying to tackle the aspect of related and supporting industries where they are able to reduce their cost of production and be in a better position to enhance their competitiveness. Then we have got tax exemption on R&D related capital expenditure, again in support of promoting the development of supporting industries, the promotion of advanced factor conditions like skills, technology, ICT, etc., etc. Then we have the 5-year tax depreciation of intellectual property. Again, we are trying to improve the firm strategy. You can buy your intellectual property, that's okay, and we will give you tax exemption. And whatever you buy will be depreciated over 5 years against your taxes. So again, this is another incentive that the government seeks to employ to promote this aspect of the diamond: firm strategy, its structure, and rivalry. So we want them to upgrade their technology. So please, if you can't produce your own intellectual property, buy it from someone else, and you can claim taxes through tax depreciation. And of course, we have the Msc status. The Msc status, again, is to bring in all these top-notch companies into the multimedia super corridor so that they will create a cluster, a digital cluster, high-end digital technology oriented companies, and they can employ foreign labor. They have state-of-art internet connection. They get the pioneer status, many more items beyond the pioneer status. So all these are meant to promote the business environment so that we can enhance our nation's competitiveness and promote national wealth and prosperity. So particularly if we look at the budget 2021, they also improve the advanced factor conditions. 15 billion for infrastructure projects, capacity building development allocation, about 70 billion, which is the highest in history. Again, to promote the advanced factor conditions, infrastructure. But for example, look at Singapore. What does Singapore have? Natural resources. It does not have anything. Switzerland, what natural resources it has? Nothing. Japan, what natural resources it has? Nothing. But they are very strong in the advanced factor conditions, their infrastructure, their businesses, their skills, their talent. With that, they are able to gain competitiveness in the global market, even though they are highly in deficit of natural resources. Singapore is a developed country simply because their infrastructure, their digital infrastructure, the skills, the talent that they attract is fantastic. And then broadband speeds. We have a broadband, but it is not broad enough. Malaysia comes in 30th globally. Singapore has topped the league in fixed broadband for speeds for 12 times in a row, only to be beaten by Taiwan last year. In terms of the digital adoption index, we are 41 over 180. So we need to upgrade our advanced factor conditions to improve our diamond, to improve our national and global competitiveness. And for this, the government gives a lot of incentives. So government has given 27 million for cybersecurity. They've given various tax breaks to attract investments to transform Malaysia into a digital economy. So we want to attack the part on firm structure, firm strategy by bringing in investments, creating a rivalry among existing companies with the existing companies so that we can upgrade the diamond and upgrade our competitiveness in the global market. We've got 8 billion allocated for the national digital network. We've got 1 billion for scheme transformasi pendigitalan industry for developing IR 4.0 technology. So the government has incentivized businesses to help develop their firm strategy and structure to help develop the advanced factor conditions, two elements of the diamond, so that they can be productive, they can be competitive, and the nation as a whole can be competitive. Again, 50 million to upgrade research and infrastructure network, 42 million to upgrade Jendela, the national digital network, 2 million to improve internet connectivity in industrial parks. And digital infrastructure is important because it relates to the advanced factor condition. So even if we do not have any resources, thank God we have oil, we have got palm oil, we can still rely on these advanced factor conditions to promote the business environment, promote the productivity of our businesses, and promote national competitiveness. Then we upskill talent. Talent is also an advanced factor condition. And here we have given 1 billion to upskill talent for the digital industry. AMDAC has got 100 million to upskill digitally ready professionals. Again, we are targeting the element of advanced factor conditions so that we can upgrade our diamond, upgrade our competitiveness. Thank you, Dr. Ida. This is my presentation. I'll be ready to take questions once Dr. Daniel is finished with his presentation.
Thank you,
I'm ready to
Datuk
take
John.
it on. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Datuk John. There is one question from Zainun. What
Okay,
about the
sure,
brain
lovely.
drain issue? Brain drain
Brain
issue,
drain issue,
how
yeah,
it affects? Yeah.
definitely. Very good question. Very good question. So the brain drain issue relates. Uh, the brain drain issue relates to the advanced factor conditions. Create specialized factors. We need skills. Skill sets are one important factor, but we are losing our talent. In fact, much of our talent has gone abroad, and they have prospered very much so. So the government now seeks, in a way, the government says it's a blessing in disguise, because whoever goes out, eventually they come back much more talented, because they have gained experience, they've gained the exposure in the particular industry that they have been working in. So when they come back to Malaysia, they are doubly skilled than before when they left the shores of Malaysia. So in a way, because Malaysia is a blessed country, wherever we go, we'll always pine for home, and we'll say there's no place like home. Wherever we go, we'll say Malaysia is the best place. So eventually the talent will come. But in the long run, we are all dead. We don't want to wait that long as well. So the government tries to entice them through talent cooperation by giving them incentives. When you come, we'll allow you to bring your foreign spouse, we'll allow you to bring 2 cars, we'll give you tax breaks, all these, and then we'll ensure that you get a right job that fits your talent and your skills. So the government is is doing to contain the drain of our skills. But that's only that much that the government can do. People go abroad for many reasons. People go abroad for their children's education. People go abroad because they feel that they don't have the the industries that can use their skills and challenge them. So so there's only that much that the government can do through by keeping talent within our shores and to attract talent that has flown away. But more important, the government substitutes it by attracting foreign talent, and that also we do very selectively, so that we do not smother the existing talent. We only invite talent, we only bring in foreign talent where we are inadequate. For example, we are now promoting aerospace industry. We have Universiti Tun Hussein On that produces graduates in aerospace, but that is still not enough. We need specialists in aerospace industries. So in this respect, the government gives incentives for companies to bring in these specialized talent to come and help complement our local talent. So yes, the government provides incentives for foreigners, for foreign businesses to bring in, to import their talent and technology to compensate for any deficit that we may have, while at the same time trying to contain the outflow of our local inbred talent.
Okay, thank you very much, Datuk John, for the answer.
Welcome, Doctor.
This is the announcement for the attendees. You may want to download the slides of Datuk John, in which the organizer has uploaded in the box in which you can download now, yeah, for your PDF file. And then,
please do.
yes, thank you, Datuk John, for the sharing.
Welcome, madam. Welcome, madam. I hope I made sense.
Yes, of course. So now I would like to invite the second panelist, which is Dr. Daniel. She is from the School of Business and Economics, Universiti Putra Malaysia. So you have 30 minutes, Dr. Daniel. Without further ado, I would like to call upon Dr. Daniel. The floor is yours.
So can I go home now, Dr. Ida?
Please wait for the Q&A.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Ida, and my tech team, Prof. Datuk John. So thanks, MPC, for this opportunity for me to give my thoughts about this today's topic on the role of government in promoting the nation's competitiveness through incentives. Right. Actually, when we talk about government incentive and competitive is something really broad. So there are a lot of ways that we can actually explore the extent to which the government incentives actually can promote competitiveness. But my discussion today, I would like to focus more on the macroeconomics perspective, in which I try to do some linkage on how assessment in terms of linking between government incentives and competitiveness. So I believe everyone can see my slides now.
Yes, we can see clearly.
Right, perfect.
You look very handsome in that photograph, Dr. Daniel.
It was taken in my center, research center.
I wish I had your crop of hair. I wish I had more hair on me.
All right. So my presentation is well, the first one I would like to give some introduction on how the incentive ecosystem. I believe that presentation by Prof. Datuk just now already gives some indication about this incentive ecosystem and how it benefits in terms of starting from the government incentive towards promoting the competitiveness. And then I'll do some analysis in terms of incentives and competitiveness. How does these two things being interrelated? There is a positive or negative relationship between these two indicators? And then I would like to also share with you guys on the lesson from best practices, some broad practices in terms of promoting competitiveness based on the industry level, and how can we move forward, yeah, based on all this information that I'm going to share with you guys in this presentation. How can we move forward? What are the important things that we need to highlight in terms of improving our delivery in giving incentives? Right. Right. So on this slide, it's actually I try to make a framework, yeah, incentives ecosystem. And actually, from my findings, actually the government incentives is across markets. It's not only limited to the industry, but it's also can be expanded to labor markets, product markets, yeah. So all of these interconnection between all these economic agents is actually at the end of the day will contribute to the level of competitiveness of our nation. In fact, I try to distinguish between a direct incentives and indirect incentives, right, in this presentation. The first one, why do we need incentives as the first point? Yeah. So in economics, many economists believe that people react to the incentives. When we talk about people, people can be myself as an individual, and then also at the firm's level. So whatever the incentives that has been provided by the governments, later on it will give some reaction. It reacts by the markets, react by the people, and later on it is become a catalyst, yeah, a catalyst for economic developments. And of course, since the economy is interrelated between markets, so it will then resulted into a multiplier effect. Right. First discussion on the direct incentives. Yeah, basically this is more a design incentives that could have immediate impacts. Yeah, on the resources users. Yeah, the incentives users or recipients, and influence return to investment in quite direct way. Right. So I believe that Prof. Dato has covered a lot in terms of these direct incentives, in terms of the exemptions. Yeah. In terms of grants, subsidies, soft loans, yeah. But it is not limited to financial incentives, but it's also non-financial incentives in terms of development programs, yeah, to promote entrepreneurship amongst the business players, and also the institution and agencies. I would like to highlight here why institution agency is one of the important non-financial direct incentives for to thrive our competitiveness. It is because by decentralizing our governments, yeah, by having agencies, by having different institutions that actually purview to a different kind of try to look at different perspective of economic development. For example, we have MPC. MPC is a very good institution or agency that really focus on productivity. We can imagine that we don't have this MPC in our economic structure in our federal governments. So we don't really have a specialized institution that will focus on look at productivity, not only for labor productivity but also capital productivity. Right. So this is the importance of having institutions and agencies in promoting competitiveness. And in terms of indirect incentives, yeah, it is more like a way that the government give away some sort of assistance, some sort of aid to make sure that they are intervening, making some intervention for the labor market, for example. Yeah. So I believe that everyone knows about government role in terms of giving the benefits for like bantuan sara hidup, or the wage subsidy program during this COVID-19 pandemic situation. All of this actually can improve the labor markets, yeah. So that later on, when we improve the labor markets, then it actually gives us a good impact in terms of economic returns. But the thing is that all this is categorized under the public goods, which is in terms of education, healthcare, and also infrastructure. In terms of results, it might be that this indirect way of government incentives can be quite time constrained in terms of it is to be effective in more time. Yeah, for example, if a government give incentives in terms of infrastructure development, so that it takes years, yeah, sometimes more than 10 years in order to make it really effective. Right. For example, the government currently want to decide on whether to continue with the HSR projects, yeah, between high-speed rail from Singapore to Kuala Lumpur. It is infrastructure development. Yeah, it is also a form of incentives where it is more indirect, because indirect in terms of creating jobs, yeah, creating more investments, and attract more tourists, and also many foreign investment. So all this ecosystem is actually interrelated to each other in order to make sure that we have support systems, and also to improve productivity of labor and capital. At the end of the day, it improves competitiveness. Yeah. That is on the way that this is being connected, right? Then yes, when we talk about this whole ecosystem, the government has really played a very big role in terms of giving incentives to the business, to the people, yeah, to the household, and etc. It is a big cost for the nation. We have to aware this, yeah, because incentives more when we talk about incentive, it's more associated to a government role. Everything like government need to do this, government need to do that. A lot of suggestions come from the industry and etc. But again, we have to know that all this is actually giving the government more cost burden. Yeah, it affects the way the fiscal budgeting that has been implemented by the governments. I take a very close example of the budget 2021. Based on my calculation, there are more than 70% of government budget is just to make sure that they incentivize the population, not only for the business but also to the people. Right. So in terms of security, social, economics, yeah, subsidies and social assistance, emolument for the government's servants, yeah, public workers. So all of this actually a way that the government do in order to support the economic development, and later on it will affect our competitiveness. Right. So my second point is on the incentive and competitiveness. Before we go even further, it is good for us to look at this global competitiveness index. Yeah. Yes, this also MPC really involved quite closely with this competitiveness index, because I can see contributors in this the reports from MPC. Yeah, all of these pillars, yeah, that I showed you in this slide, it really signifies the importance of fulfilling all these pillars, yeah, that they're being divided into 4 main areas, which is enabling environments, human capital, markets, and innovation system. The things that I would like to highlight here is that these pillars, yeah, the dimension of competitiveness is a way that we can provide an overarching spectrum, yeah, towards evaluate our effectiveness of incentives given by the government. So industry, the government's agencies really have looked at this every single point of these pillars, yeah, in order to make sure that our competitiveness is aligned to the global practices. Yeah, I took a very close example, like on the innovation ecosystem. Dato just now also mentioned about innovation. Yeah, how innovation is really important in making sure that we can be competitiveness not only in for domestic markets but beyond our borders. Yeah. So when we talk about innovation ecosystem, there are 2 pillars here: business dynamism and also innovation capabilities. Yes, innovation. I took pillar 12, innovation capabilities. Yeah, under these pillars, there are several indicators has been outlined by this World Economic Forum. Yeah, in order to gauge the evaluates, yeah, the capability of innovation of a particular country. So it relates to different areas such as interaction and diversity, in terms of diversity of workforce, yeah? Research and development, yeah, the role of scientific publication, patent application, R&D expenditures, research institution prominence. All of these elements, yeah, is actually a measurement, yeah, a key measure that has been used in order to measure research and development, and later on it will affect innovation capability. And in terms of scores, yeah, of course, Malaysia has been ranked in as the 27th place out of 141 countries. Basically, we are doing well in terms of competitiveness. Yeah. So overall, we are on this 27th, but in these very specific pillars, we can do some assessment later on in how can we improve this because these are become the important indicators in order to measure our competitiveness at the global level. To be specific, our institution ranked as the 25th state on the 25th, ranked as at the 25th. Infrastructure on 35, ICT adoption on the 33rd, okay, and macroeconomic stability on the 35 as well. And we are quite low in terms of health performance, but my critiques on this is that they just use one indicator for measuring health pillars, just like health, life expectancy. Of course, life expectancy is something many countries almost have quite indifferent life expectancy, especially when we talk about upper middle income countries and above. Right, so I'll also focus on the labor market. So this is because it is related to our people and all the labor force, and also relate to the productivity and competitiveness of a firm. In terms of labor markets, there is the needs of flexibility. This is what has been highlighted in post-COVID-19 government recovery plans. Most of the in terms of stimulus packages, in terms of our current budget for 2021. So many aspects of labor markets has been addressed. So to make sure that all the market can be worked very well, because when people are happy with their compensation, they can actually improve their productivity. Okay, now I do some quick assessment on how can we correlate between government incentives and competitiveness, right? By using data that I got from MOF on incentives, which is has been proceeded by corporate tax per capita. It is something that this assessment I did based on economic literatures that I get from academic practices. The main point that I like to highlight here is that there is positive relationship in Malaysia case. So it indicates that first, the government has played a very vital role in terms of promoting global competitiveness, for Malaysia. So it's really positive relationship. And second one, it shows that the incentive given by the government is works, in order to promote competitiveness of our industry at the world level. However, it's also important to note here that incentives have clear fiscal costs. As I mentioned in my presentation just now, I told you that 70% of government budgets actually goes to incentivize people, right, in an industry. But there's still unclear benefits, right? So unclear benefits here, it doesn't mean that it has no benefits. But in my assessment on my left-hand side of my slide, really indicates that there's positive relationship, meaning there is improvement in terms of competitiveness. So it is good. But at the micro level, it is something still should be taken into account, into consideration. Okay. For example, we know that we have increased our competitiveness in the world level, and it is subject to the government incentives. But then, what are the people get from these kind of incentives? Is it are they well compensated? Are these people their welfare has been really taken care of? So that these are the questions that need to be addressed. Not only designing the industry policy in promoting by incentivize the industry, but also we have to make sure that people also benefit from these incentives. And in fact, incentives sometimes tend to be ineffective in practice. Yeah, so it might be works, sometimes it's not work. Yeah, in a academic practice, we call it big push theory. Yeah? Big push theory is something that people, government incentivize a certain industry, and then that industry flourish, and then later on it will give spillover effects to the supply chain and etc. By the end of the day, the question is, does the people happy with that, right? So we have to look at this as well. And yeah, in terms of giving incentive, transparency matters. Okay, because there is also a tendency in many studies saying that when the incentive goes to non-economic allocation of fund, so that it could have led to inflated deals. It means that it has become a burden for the government, even though the government gives some incentives, yeah, but it's not economically viable projects and etc. So later on, is something it's not really benefits for the people and also for the economy. And another one is high incentives. Yeah, it's equal to high average tax rates. Yeah, so I believe the industry really don't like this. Yeah, when the tax rates increases, not really good for business because it incurs more cost. Yeah, for the production cost for the firms. So that also it translates not in favor to a better welfare for the people. Right, so these are the juggling things that the government, the policymakers, yeah, have to really look at in order to make sure that we are not only incentivize the industry, but we also need to take care of the people. Yeah? Right, so some benchmarking, yeah, best practices in terms of promoting industry performance, yeah, by having government incentives. I took this example from Czech Republic automotive industry. Yeah, maybe some of our audience attenders coming from industry which is related to automotive industry. You can make some check and balance in terms of this example. Yeah, there is a policy mix made by the Czech government. Yeah. So they call it national incentive schemes, yeah, which bring technology and business services that sets out to the condition for attracting FDIs. So they give in terms of tech-intensive grant for job creation and training, preferential rates for land and infrastructure use, and grants for capital investments. But it conditioned the foreign investors to have creating job in our economy. So the very close example was that Western Digital, yeah, it is pleaded to promise to invest more in our economy to increase their production capacity, and later on they promise to create more jobs. Yeah, so this is something good for the economy, and in fact the government should know to trace based on all these tax relief, all the grants and any supports that government give in terms of promoting competitiveness and also industry performance. We have to look at who are the beneficiaries, or which industries, and we have to lay out in one framework so that we know we can trace all these the incentive recipients, and then we can evaluate whether it is something successful or not. In fact, for this Czech Republic case for automotive industry is something really a successful model, whereby the automotive industry in Czech Republic they involved in a high value added activities that support the global value chain of automotive industry that has been leading by automotive industry in Germany. So they become a supportive industry at the regional level. At the same time, they are not only promoting for economic growth, but also in terms of labor skills, yeah, in terms of capital use. All of this thing is actually the participation in the global value chain somehow improve the condition for the Czech Republic, especially in the automotive industry. But I also need to give credits, to our industry. In my presentation, I took this information from Malaysia Productivity Corporation Productivity Report 2020, the recent one. Malaysia is doing great too, in terms of delivery incentives, to trace what are the impacts to the sectors. For example, in this case, this is for E&E industry. Okay, there is of course there are challenges that being faced by the E&E players, especially at the global level. For example, there is a first one, the economic shift from G7 countries to E7 countries. Okay, E7 countries are those Brazil, China, India, Indonesia, Mexico, Russia, and Turkey. So these are emerging countries that are now trying to emerge and become the world power. And also competitors, they are moving fastest in terms of industry, whereby like German, they have started their German Industry 4.0, right? So whereby it is being supported by 159 trade associations that are active, active trade association. I believe also Datuk just now mentioned about the pinning E&E structure, that the role of industry association is really important there, right? Other than that, competition from China. The thing is that China is made a Made in China 2025 program. It is a way for the Chinese government to make sure that the domestic content in the E&E production is higher, from 40% in year 2020. Now they want in 2025 they want to increase it up to 70%. So it is something that we really need to work on, to make sure that our E&E industry also can compete with this change in policy and political things in the world overview. So in that case, the government of China has invested about 50 billion just to make sure that they can materialize the Made in China 2025 programs. So those are the challenges that has been faced by E&E players in our countries. But I believe the government has know about this already, and has done some very good homework in terms of making sure that our E&E industry can flourish, like promote higher value-added activities, including research, development, and design, and produce complex products. So all of these programs has been spearheaded by MIDA through incentive process, incentive programs, administered by MIDA, so that it gives some impacts to the sector. And also enforcement of minimal guaranteed service level for utilities and infrastructure in key industrial zones. So high technology used in the industrial zone also become one of the way that the government try to put an incentive. Later on, it can be a good strategy in order to improve Malaysia competitiveness, right? And this is my last slide. Moving forward, so since our discussion is more on smart incentives, I just do some abbreviation based on smarts. How can we improve the way we incentivize the industry and also the people? The first one is to be specific. Specific here, it is specific for industry and region. Why? Of course, based on I looked at reports by NPC, there are core industries that has been selected to be promoted, right? That is good. And then there is a specific for industry and region. Why region? Because we are just now, Prof. Dato has mentioned about shared prosperity. We have a very big problem in terms of regional disparities. Even though we have all these strategies has been done by our governments, but in our Shared Prosperity Vision 2020, SPV 2030 policy, regional imbalances become the core elements that need to be addressed. So by giving incentives, we really need to know that we need to improve the accountability of our incentives, yeah, so that we want to monitor what do we get from our incentive spending? Is it aligned to the strategy that we already put in our policy? And do we really monitor? M stands for monitor. Monitor should be regular and measurable, right? So it is really important to have a regular and measurable incentives, yeah, program, so that we know whether it is really aligned to the things that we really plan for in our economic policy. And A stands for achievable. Achievable in the sense that we have limited resources. Since 70% of the incentives come from the government, and later on it will given the fiscal burden for the government. But by having that, we really need to be realistic. We have the capability to deliver. Our industry is a good enough, well-equipped in terms of technology, in terms of innovation. The support systems has been really there for to boost up industry capability and industry competitiveness. Later on, it's become enabler, yeah, to improve our nation competitiveness. And last but not least is timely. Yeah, because there are many, I believe that there are many dissatisfaction by the industry, say that government is quite late delivering things and that. But I believe that government now, under the new government, they have Laksana. Laksana is really monitor whatever the government is spending on, so that this be really well monitored, and to make sure that also government has pledged that they are going to deliver the budget 2020 as fast as possible. So it requires speed, agility, and flexibility in terms of giving incentives. Yeah, by having all these institution like NPC, MIDA, and etc. So they are all working together in making sure that the communication to get information about incentives for the industry can be accessed to everyone. Yeah, and yeah, I think that's all from my presentation. I hope I really make it in time. All right.
Yes, thank you very
Thank you
much,
so much.
Dr. Daniel.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So in terms of time management, yes, of course, all of you have been in time, and we have session for Q&A. Before I open this Q&A, maybe one question from the participants to Dr. Daniel. This is about, yeah, you mentioned about the connectivity just now and inclusiveness. So the focus is on the connectivity of the internet or the broadband. And the suggestion from the participants saying that government should focus on the incentive in terms of the digitalization and connectivity. And one of the participants from the industry, I believe, is said that the telephone cost or connectivity cost now is the highest for him, you know, in the industry. So any response to this, Dr. Daniel?
Right. It is very important, yeah, things, because we are talking about digital economy, digitalization, etc. To move forward to be a developed nation, we have to we need in the infrastructure, yeah, in order to really get well connected, not only the urban area, business communities, business clusters, and etc., but also beyond that to the people. People are also need to be connected. Yeah. Now we have problem in terms of Sabah and Sarawak, but the government has do the good initiative like just now Prof. Datuk mentioned about Jendela. It is a good strategy in order to make sure that the connectivity can be assessed by connectivity is widespread throughout our nations. Yeah. And then of course in terms of cost, it is important. Yeah. As industry has mentioned about high cost of this connectivity and etc. for the business. I believe that once we have this infrastructure set, that also indicates that there is economy of scales in terms of our connectivity. Yeah, so that the government really put a high investment in terms of make sure that people are connected. that is still the small business and high demand. That's why people the price of to subscription for Get Connected is really high. But once again, if let's say we have the economy of scales and there are more players are participating in the telecommunication industry, later on it will be more cheaper. Yeah, I believe that. So of course, it is still a challenge for the industries, yeah, to have this kind of problem. But I believe there will be more, provided that we have all these incentives. We also have the regulation in terms of competition law and etc. So those ecosystem already there to making sure that we can give benefits to the industries. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Daniel. Now we have also questions in which I would like to open to both of you. Yeah, the question is, how can we make industry accountable for the productivity through incentive and other government financial assistance? I mean, when the government give assistance or financial incentive, they also has to be accountable on their productivity. Okay, I open to both. Maybe Dato, you should go first. Yeah, please unmute Dato.
Yeah, thank
Oh
you,
yeah,
Dr.
we
Ida.
can. Yeah.
I think this question was well answered by Dr. Daniel in his last slide on his SMART accounting for the incentive system. And just to add on to what he has mentioned, I think one way to ensure accountability is by the introduction of KPIs. So when the government gives a particular incentive system, I think it should make sure that it also imposes KPIs as to what should be the outcomes that the government wants from this incentive system. So if there is a subsidy, if there is a tax break, and all this costs money to the government. So what can the industry or the company give in return in terms of the outcomes? Is it in terms of increasing exports? Is it in terms of greater employment of skilled labor? Is it in terms of the use of high technology, value-added technology? Or is it in terms of moving to other industries that have high value-added production? So I think these KPIs must be specified to either to the industry as a whole that has an industry association, or to individual companies that are beneficiaries of these incentives, so KPIs. And at the end of the day, if a company satisfies the KPIs, yes, the government will continue with the incentive system. Now we give a 10-year tax break, and over the next 10 years, we do not know what the companies are doing. And at the end of the 10 years, they say, okay, goodbye, we are leaving. So that there is no real accountability. So government should pin these companies who take government subsidies and government incentives in terms of tax breaks to a set of outcome-based KPIs. That's number one. And number two, the government should not give a total grant to the companies that request them. It should go for matching grants. So you pay 1 ringgit, the government gives 1 ringgit. And that's what MIDA does. The MIDA does in its strategic domestic investment fund. Money is only provided on a matching basis. So you put 10 million, MIDA will give you 10 million. And that way, there is a greater buy-in, a greater ownership of the incentives by the company that is the beneficiary. So matching grant, KPIs, and we can bring in foreign direct investments. But if our companies do not upgrade their productivity, do not upgrade their business operations, there's no way they can supply and plug into the supply chain of these multinational companies. So the government can specify, good, we are going to bring in these type of multinationals into the country. They would want these supplies. Can you manufacture them to the satisfaction to the international and rigorous standards of quality? And if they can, then I think the government can focus more on inviting these kind of investments. Otherwise, it would have to focus in other areas where companies are willing to rise up to the challenge to ensure high quality supplies for these impending foreign direct investments. So Dr. Ida, KPIs, matching grants, and encouraging SMEs to stand up and raise their productivity so that investments, foreign direct investments, can pour in. If the investors can't find local suppliers, then they are going to rely on their own global supply chain, and that will have only minimal impact on the economy. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, thank you, Dr. John. Now I would like to invite Dr. Daniel, any response from you. How can we make the industry accountable, yeah, for their productivity through the incentive that given by the government?
Right. Thank you for the question. It's a very good question. Anyway, I'd like to yes, as Dr. mentioned just now, that my last slide is really emphasize on that. Right. So improve accountability. First one is to have to make sure that the giving incentives, yeah, is actually comes from what is the government policy, what is the government direction towards economic developments. So when we know what is our targets, yeah, so we set a necessary goal in order to achieve a certain level of economic development, not only at the industry cluster, but it can be expanded into the regional level of economic progress. So that by having that goal, then the government have to design the incentives program in order to promote the participation of industries in that particular planning process. So that in making sure that I couldn't agree more with what Dato' mentioned about KPI. Of course, the government has their own KPI in making sure that all the ministries, they has their own KPI in terms of delivering incentives to people, yeah, to make sure that people participation in the business, the government deliveries, and etc. So has been fulfilled, yeah, in order to make sure that the government accountability is there. So other than that, we also have all these, once the government has delivered the incentives, yeah, so there should be a evaluation. As I mentioned, we need to monitor on the regular basis, and it must be measurable. Right. So given that the current government is more transparent, I believe that many people really agree with me on that. So the transparency of the government is really important. Yeah. And in fact, government transparency also become one of the elements, yeah, that has been assessed for the Global Competitiveness Index. Yeah, we set aside all these things that happen in our country in terms of corruption and etc. But the things that I really want to mention here is that transparency matters. Yeah, so that when government become transparent, okay, they deliver all the incentives that be requested by the industries. Yeah, and at the same time, okay, industries need to be educated in terms of making sure they use the incentives responsibly. Yeah, so the government need to conduct effective communication for responsible incentive use. By knowing this, so that we know what are the purpose of these incentives, and later on what are the targets that the government wants once they deliver or they give away the kind of incentives. Yeah, so once the industry knows these are the targets. We want to promote, for example, Matric did a very good job in terms of promoting our export products. Yeah, so they have the training program for new exporter, newbie in exporting. Yeah, so they went to the programs, and then they have been educated, so they have been trained to be good exporters, and later on they can penetrate the global markets. Yeah, so from this it gives insights, yeah, to the industries, the role of incentives to promote economic growth. Yeah, not only for their business, but also to the economy, to the people, right? When we knows that we make decision on applying for incentive, for example, the industry. Yeah, so once we know the purpose of the incentives and what are the spillover effects, the social aspect that has been contributed by having that incentives, then we have the responsibility in managing the incentives well, and also we know how to use it responsibly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Daniel. I would imagine that if I'm the company and I get incentive from the government, means that that is a KPI for me. So if I didn't meet the KPI, perhaps the second incentive may not be given. Isn't that so?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I believe
I
that the
do agree
government
with
also,
that.
yeah. In fact, the government also has a good connection with the industry association. So I believe that this is not just that the industry come from nowhere, but it is all the industry is actually Malaysian, also some foreigners who have good connection with our government, and also they have good connection in terms of their what I call it, industry associations. So this is also a good way on how the government can monitor the way that the incentive can be used by the industry. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have a third question. What is Malaysia's external economic factors that very significant? Maybe based on the research or based on your experience before. Yes, Dato' John.
Oh, yeah.
What can be the
I think
external
the very
economic factors?
significant factors is the global economic recovery that very much hinges on the vaccine development. We already have one vaccine, Zeneca, uh, up in the market, but we do not know how effective it will be and whether there is going to be another spike in the infection. So, assuming that we are able to contain the spread, there's no way we can eliminate COVID-19. COVID-19 will be with us for as long as we can foresee, just like malaria, cholera, dengue. It's going to be with us. The question is how well can we manage, and whether we can respond to the infection quickly with vaccine. The global economy feels confident with this development of vaccine by uh, AstraZeneca. China also has come up with a vaccine. So based on this, we can have some optimism that the virus will be contained under the new normal with the SOPs of social distancing. So global recovery is impending in the coming year. And if the global recovery does happen in 2021 and beyond, we can then be in a much better shape than we are in 2020, because we are a trading nation. 80% of our exports, our exports constitute 80% of our GDP. So, and we are very heavily reliant on export markets. So if the global economy recovers and is expected to recover, world economy is expected to grow by about 1 to 2% next year, then we will have a bigger market to exploit economies of scale, like what Dr. Daniel was saying, and we will be in a better position to raise our competitiveness and our ability to export, as well as to attract foreign direct investments. Now, the whole global economy is in the doldrum. Foreign direct investments worldwide have come down by 40%, Malaysia 50%. So next year, when the economy improves, investors will be more minded to start investing, especially in developing countries. Number two, I think it also goes to what is going to be the fate of the trade spat between US and China. Under Donald Trump, we could have expected it to get worse, but we are not sure what the incoming president of the United States agenda is, how he will perceive this trade war. I don't see an end to this trade war because the US feels that they are in a comparative disadvantage with China, given the lopsided trade deals that they have had with China. So that the spat might go on, albeit in a very muted way. So that also is a stumbling block for world global growth, because exports contribute to global growth. And if this war goes on, it will have implications to all trading partners, including Malaysia. But then again, there is a blessing in disguise, because companies are relocating from China because of restrictions by the US in terms of exports from China. So many of them have gone to Vietnam and Cambodia and Indonesia. We should also plug in to grab this piece of action so that we can develop our economy through these increased investments that are relocating from China. In fact, Japan is giving subsidies for its companies to move back to Japan, and we would need to tailor some customized subsidies to win over these companies that are about to relocate from China. They're all coming to Southeast Asia, no doubt about it, because we are competitive, our labor costs are low compared to that of the developed world. But we must strategize ourselves, be proactive. We are doing something, and I think MIDA is up in the forefront trying to tap into this outflow. And I think if we can get this outflow in, which Indonesia and Vietnam have managed commendably so far, then we have something going for us. And then number three, the world is also becoming increasingly protectionist. Obviously, we saw in the trade war within China and the US. We now see it in Brexit. So increasingly, countries are very protective of their markets. We do not, although they are still now within the confines of the World Trade Organization requirements, but should they breach these requirements, then increasing protectionism will cause our markets to shrink, and we might not have the markets to expand our scale of production. So I see three things: the development of an effective vaccine to contain the pandemic, which will then result in a booster to the global recovery, which will then have a positive externality effect on our exports, because our markets will then expand. We trade war between India and between Malaysia, between the US and China, and the increasing protectionist tendencies that do not augur well for exports. Dr. Ida?
Thank you. Yes, we are open economy, so we are very much affected by what is happening around us.
Yes.
Okay, we have the question number 4 I would like to pose to Dr. Daniel. This is from the participants. The question is, where should the government start first if they were to relook at the incentive strategies? Means that if you are given a clean sheet, so where should we start? What is the best way to do?
Right. Start from the existing incentives. Yeah.
I see.
All the incentives that have been given by the government need to be re-evaluated. Whether, existing and all past incentives. Yeah. Because the thing is that when we talk about the effectiveness of incentives, it's not a straight away effective. Yeah. So it needs time to be really look the result. Yeah. So yeah, we can evaluate past incentives. Yeah, whether it is really helpful in terms of promoting competitiveness, or is it good in terms of generating more income, not only for the industry but also for the people. Yeah. So yeah, we have a lot of economic policies. It started from our national economic new economic policies 1971 until now. There are many incentives, many policies. Yeah. So those are the right way on how do we really looked at. Yeah. In order to make sure that whether the incentive strategies are really effective or not. Then from there we can learn. Okay, we learn from any mistakes that we have committed, in the past, in the previous incentives given to the industries. And other than that, we also can do some study in terms of how other countries promotes or give away incentives to the industry. So just now, Dato' have give a very good example, that matching grants. So incentives not really given straight 100% to the industry. I believe that MIDA has do a very good homework on this before they decided to give a matching grants. Same goes for the industry, for the academia. For my case, it's not everything comes from the governments. In fact, the initiative comes from the academics and meet with the industry, and then the government support in terms of matching grants for research. One strategy is first look at what are the past experience, and second, look at the other countries' experience in terms of their best practices, in terms of giving incentives. But again, when we talk about look at other countries' experience, it must be suitable to our culture as well. So this is something that's still missing in making benchmarking. We are proud of their, let's say, Japanese do very well in terms of their economic developments, but the culture here is not really same like what the Japanese did, right? So it must be tailored to the current situation or the practices that currently we have in our economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Daniel. I think recently I attended a webinar of green economy in Taiwan. Lessons learned from me, in Taiwan, they didn't depend on the government so much. Actually, all the green initiatives are being done by the private sector themselves, by the SMEs, and then only later that the government comes in. Looks like it is the other way around in our country. The government has to initiate things first, and the industry will join in. So, what do you think, Dr. John?
In a way, yes. I think our industries are very dependent on the government for the incentives, the policies. In a way, they feel right to do so, because the government needs to establish an ecosystem that is conducive to the business environment. The more business friendly the ecosystem it is, the more productive can companies be. And this ecosystem goes beyond the issue of incentives, both physical, both monetary as well as non-monetary. It also goes to the root of regulation. It also goes to the root of bureaucracy. We have Bermuda, whose sole job is to tear down bureaucracy. And yet we still see bureaucracy, although Malaysia is now is ranked 12th in the ease of doing business, we are still far behind in terms of enforcing contracts, in terms of providing business permits. It takes us 17.5 days to register a business, whereas in the case of Singapore, it's only 1 day. So there's a lot of room to reduce regulations to help businesses to breathe better. And more so, we must also see that we cannot compare totally with Taiwan, because Taiwan is a developed economy. So being developed, industries are very mature. They have got a huge cash bank. They have a huge talent, a huge data bank, and they can survive on their own. Our industries are all fledgling. They're all new. And we are going to new areas like to the digital market, e-commerce. So these are all very new for our brick and mortar businesses. And as such, they look to the government for leadership. Then they look to the government for help and assistance. And we are providing. We have MIDA, we have AMDAC, we have got many other agencies, Martrade, to promote their exports. So because we are a trading nation, and we want to make sure that our companies survive, and so the government feels that it should go shoulder to shoulder with the businesses to promote the economy and the larger prosperity of society.
Thank you, Dato'. you bring in the perspective of not just financial incentive, it has to be non-financial incentive as well to create the
Exactly.
environment which is positive, right? So
True.
Dr. Daniel, any response to that?
Well, I really agree in the sense that, of course, as I mentioned in my slides, that there are financial and non-financial incentives given by the government. Yeah. So earlier I also mentioned that comparing between Taiwan also is, yeah, based on the culture is different. But also Prof. Dato also mentioned about they are developed countries and we are developing countries. The mindset will be different. But I cannot undermine the capability of our startups. We have to look at startup also, because these startups currently they are more creative in terms of financing their business. Sometimes they don't even need government incentives. Yeah, so we are on track because of this, the role of globalization, okay, the expansion of technological change, and etc. So those are the factors that actually open up the minded of these new startups in order to not only exploring market for the domestic market, but also they are now go beyond our borders. Yeah, so yeah, we can take this example. In fact, maybe MPC can take this opportunity to call up all these startups who are not using government incentives in order to develop their business and thrive. Because this is something that we need to explore, because maybe these startups going to be trendsetters, to be aligned to the Taiwan's example. They don't need government, but they initiate the incentive, and then they support their peers in the same industries, and etc. So I can see some examples of my colleagues and etc. who are involved in a business. So they do this because they think because of many factors. Yeah, but the point is that we are moving towards that. Yeah, because of all of these factors that I mentioned just now. It's a good progress, but yet still need to be looked at, yeah, and support.
Yeah, thank you for the startup ideas there. Okay, next question, number 5. Maybe I can pose to Datuk John. How can the industry play a role to ensure that the government assistance are really what the industry require? In this case, it is communication between the industry and the government. What is the best way that they can communicate actually what is the required incentive?
Very true. I think we cannot run away from the communication that Dr. Daniel talked about in his presentation. There must be active communication. It must not be one way, with the government saying, look here, guys, we want to go here, we want to go into high tech, we want to go into e-commerce, we want to go into digital, but it must be a two-way communication where the government engages the industry. But the industry also must go beyond their comfort zone. They cannot be besotted with their migrant labor, besotted with their archaic technology. They should also be in a position to invest in this modern industry 4.0 technologies. They should wean themselves from the addiction of foreign labor. And so the industry too has a part to play in responding to the government policy. And this is where the KPIs and the evaluation system comes in. If we want the industry to move in the direction that the government wants the industry to move, then we need to tie them to a set of performance targets for the incentives and subsidies that are offered. But the industry itself must be more forthcoming in terms of their vision and not wallowing in their problems. Oh, I don't have enough labor, I don't have this, I don't have that. So they should go beyond their current problems to look for new solutions, to look for new areas that the government says it will promise help in terms of digitalization, e-commerce, in terms of the adoption of modern technology. So I think the industry should also start moving forward than being concerned more short-termist and relying on their traditional technology. I think that's the part I think the industry should play. I think the government has been very forthcoming. They have had so many blueprints. They've got digital government, digital economy blueprint. They have the industrial master plan, industrial master plan 3. There were so many plans, and I think the government, if the industries can respond and align their strategies in the direction of these plans, I think together industry and government will have greater synergy. It's now the government is the one that is huffing and puffing and and shouldering the greater responsibility in pushing them in the right direction. But I suppose we need the initial push, and then eventually the momentum will be built, and the businesses will be able to move on their own steam, as in the case of Taiwan and other developed countries. Dr. Ida?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. John, for the explanation. I would like to go to Dr. Daniel. In your slides, you've shown some of the ranking that we have. So this is a question from the participant. Where are we in education from the benchmark that has been done? And must there be a revamp to stay competitive, especially in health and ICT, in which it needs a lot of work there? So, Dr. Daniel, health and ICT.
Okay. Before I answer to that question, I would like to add up to the what Datuk mentioned about the previous question on the how the government assistance are really what the industry wants. Yeah. Yes, this is related to information. Yeah, information asymmetrics. Yeah. So with industry has to know that government has limited information as well. So they don't know what are the industry really required to some extent. Yeah. So it might be that some big players, for example, they are if they are actively engaged with the government know what are their problems, right? But the for small players, especially SMEs, right? They have maybe limited information, limited knowledge, limited training, and etc. So they don't know who can help them, right? So this comes the role of an association. Yes. So my next question to the industry is that do they participate or actively involve in the industry association? Because the thing is that as mentioned just now, for example, in German, in their industry revolution 4.0, there are effective or active participation by 159 trade association. Consists of more than 300 companies. Yeah, they are very active, participating and communicating with the government, and make sure that they stay competitive in the global markets. So now it's a wake-up call also for the industry to make sure to strengthen their industry cooperation in an industry association, and look forward to engage with the governments. Yeah. So because the government does not only address issue for the industry's problems, but also for the people's problem. More than 30 million people that government need to really look at, yeah, even though they have their own agencies and etc. and ministries. But the point is here, the information, yeah, gathered by the industry matters here. Make sure that you are accessible to information. Because we are well versed about Google around whatever assistance that we want for the governments. It is it's all there. Yeah, it's just a matter of finding the information and close the gap. All right. So my response to the question, yes, of course, we in terms of our ranking, all these things that has been raised up by our attendees related to competitiveness index. Yeah. So in terms of health, in terms of ICT, of course, we are still. I cannot say that we are lag behind. It's just that we need some sort of improvement. Yeah, and I believe that all these initiatives that government already planned is now in the ongoing process. They try to realize this, yeah, in a very fast and rapid time, yeah, because government also because of this pandemic issue, government realized that they really need to speed up all these things. Yeah, so it is blessed us for us because of this situation that we get the benefits from this the issue. Of course, in terms of education, yeah, education is something that is important to be discussed. I believe that it should be discussed in a separate seminar because there is competition in education as well. There are a lot of private education sectors and also competing with the public education institutions, right? So how do these two complement should be looked at? Yeah, because by having these two, so that we are going to improve our human capital markets, yeah, our labor markets, and also our graduates, yeah, our students, and to make sure that we have quality education and it is accessible to all. Yeah, right. That's my response.
Yeah, and Dr.
Thank you.
Ida,
Yes, please.
if I could follow up on what Dr. Daniel said, education is very important. It is one of the four angles of the diamond model of Michael Porter. That is skills, education. But in our country, we know what ails the education system, but we don't want to go there because education appears politicized. And I think if we do not address the education system, then higher education will fail because it's garbage in, garbage out. So if we get good school leavers, then we will be able to produce better graduates and postgraduates. So leaving aside basic education for the moment, I think we need to now focus more on TVET, technical and vocational education, since we don't have much leeway in the education system to significantly improve itself. So I think the equal focus must be on TVET, and that of course requires a cultural culture change, a mindset change. People will have to come to realize that TVET is equally important or equally reputable as an academic education, like in Germany and Switzerland. Uh, People who go through the TVET, the technical and vocational system, earn as much as doctors and other academics, people who have come out from the academic system, and their TVET is world class. I mean, they are the benchmark themselves, and they feed their students to all the SMEs, their Mittelsteins they call it, and some of the training institutes are so specialized to cater for a particular industrial sector. And I think if we can level up our technical and vocational education, that will go for meeting the semi-skilled labor that we also lack. So yes, I agree with Dr. Daniel. Education is very important, and equally, we need to focus on increasing our capacity and capability of imparting valued, industry-relevant, technical and vocational education. Thank you, Dr. Ida.
Okay, thank you. Even the initiative done by MPC, by Malaysia Productivity Corporation, with this live webinar is also a continuous education for all of us. I mean, we are not in the university anymore, we are in the industry. So I just would like to congratulate all the participants from the industry. This is a chance for you to, in terms of communication with the government agency and the information asymmetry, as mentioned by Dr. Daniel, this is one way of getting it, and perhaps COVID-19 has made a way for us, a new way. In the past, we just would like to meet face to face. Now, I think we attended a lot of webinar throughout the day. Yeah. Okay. This is the a question which is energy source. Yeah. The question is, shall there be a consideration of energy source like nuclear to make us more competitive because it's cheaper, yeah, and also it is renewable? So in this case, the incentive can have a limitation. But at the first place, I think the government need to make a decision whether we would like to go for energy source like nuclear. So any response from any one of you?
If I may take the first shot. Sorry, Dr. Daniel, I seem to be talking a lot as usual. Yes, I think it's nuclear energy is a very clean source of energy, but I don't think it is cheap. Number one, it's going to be very costly to set up a nuclear installation, and number two, it is even more costly to ensure that it is safe. We have seen cases of Chernobyl. We have seen cases in the Fukushima. I'm not so sure exactly the name of the place where
Japan,
the
yeah, in
tsunami
India.
came and that damaged their nuclear installation, and radioactivity leaked. It's Fukuyama, some place in Japan. So, and then there was mile end incident where there was a meltdown of the of the nuclear material in the nuclear installation. Maybe these could be isolated events, but we know that Germany has put a stop to nuclear energy. Japan has also put a moratorium on nuclear energy. So they are now increasingly relying on electric energy. And of course, the world today is relying on coal, dirty fossil fuel to generate electricity. But the end has come, or it is the beginning of the end of fossil fuel as the economy increasingly moves towards a green environment. In fact, the whole world Kyoto Agreement, they have come up with an agreement that says we should by 2050 we should bring down our green gas house emission to within 2% of the pre-industrial revolution greenhouse gas emission. So the permissible limit is only 2%. So increasingly, countries are becoming more and more conscious of their carbon footprint, and so they're moving away from fossil fuel. But I don't see any trend going to nuclear energy. They are moving towards more other renewable energies such as wind, solar, tidal. So increasingly they're relying on solar energy, wind energy. In our case, we are blessed with sunshine, but we only have 4 hours of sunshine. The rest of it is all cloudy, and that doesn't augur well for our solar energy. Wind energy, I don't see much wind in Kuala Lumpur, maybe because there are so many concrete buildings, and but we have a lot of natural resources in terms of hydropower. In fact, I think we started Bakun Dam, we rescaled it, we made it smaller, and I think we can go increasingly to hydroelectric power using waterfalls, dams to make the shift away from fossil fuel. Yes, but we can still explore solar energy. Tidal energy maybe may not be that imminent. Wind may not be that not so feasible either. But I think the way to go will be hydroelectric, hydropower, and solar power for whatever the 4 hours that we have of sunshine. So yes, we need to go to renewable, but nuclear may not be the way. Not now, given the hesitation of other developed countries towards nuclear. Maybe until and unless the world feels secure that nuclear energy is safe, and then and only then we should go towards nuclear energy. Dr. Ida.
Yeah, and any response, Dr. Daniel, to add?
Yeah, thank you. I really like this question because I also involved in one of the study conducted by previously it was Malaysia Nuclear Power Corporation, MNPC. right?
Mm.
They cannot the feasibility of having this
Mm.
nuclear power plant. Yes, Prof. Dato has made a very lot of points there. He mentioned already. It's just that I would like to highlight that yes, the nuclear power, technically it is clean. It is more energy efficient and it is safe in a technical form. But we have to aware that even though this technology is really efficient on paper, but it is somehow vulnerable in terms of external factors. Yeah, some examples have been given by Prof. Dato just now, like earthquake in Japan has caused the destruction of the nuclear power, and then it affects all people's residents within the borders. Yeah? And then in terms of feasibility to be implemented, of course it is expensive, yeah, because it requires a lot of investment by the government if it is want to be realized. But I'm myself is not in favor with this nuclear technology, provided we have very small geographical area, so we are prone to any kind of disaster, even though we are not in the what you call lingkaran api Pacific, etc. But we are still has the tendency to get problems later on. Yes, exploring on the energy source, it can be more than that, right? My suggestion, like for industry, for example, yeah, instead of making it a big clean energy projects, why don't we put in a small scale? The example, a very good example is India. I get a chance to look at one of the documentary about one airport in India has been powered by solar power. Just for the airports, so that we can put it in a small community scale. Yeah, so in a village or something, so that we have that power, so that really just cater for the particular area, and then that also can give spillover effect in terms of competitiveness. So there are more companies can joint venture in electrical supplies, right? And then it creates more jobs and etc. Right? So that's my second point. And then later on, we also can explore the feasibility of exploring on the hydrogen energy. Korea has started this, right? They try to they have made some innovation in terms of powering their industries, powering their vehicles using hydrogen energy. In fact, hydrogen energy is not new. It's not something new in our economy as well. There are some industries that is already used energy power, hydrogen power, but it's not. It's very on a small scale, just for a particular task or particular workmanship, something like that. So there is no. It's not really widespread. We can explore, learning from this industry. Later on, we can make it as something that we can implement in the national scale. Yeah, that's my response.
Thank you. The hydrogen power. Okay, thank you. I have a last question, and we are going almost 12, which is our cutoff point. Yeah, so I believe that we are on time. Last question. How do we know that the incentive provided by the government is equally shared by the players? So yeah, Dato' John, how can
Yeah, I
we
think
know that?
I think this goes back to Dr. Daniel's suggestion. We must evaluate. We have been giving what do you call it, incentives all these years, but there's been no real fundamental systematic research that has been taken as to who has got what and what have they given in return. So I think number one, it has to go to a very fundamental evaluation of the efficacy of the incentive system. It'll be a big job, but I think MIDA has started to work on it. So MIDA is now working with Bank Negara in making this evaluation so that the incentive system of the future will be a more effective one. And number two, we need to realize the fact that we need the big players. When we started the electrical and electronics cluster in Penang, we attracted 7 or 8 big multinationals. Intel was one, and other big players who came in. And when they came in, Others followed them, and our local supply chain developed, and over the years we formed a cluster. So we need an anchor tenant, just like in any mega mall that we go, there's always an anchor tenant. And then from there, others will come in. So likewise, we need to focus on the big players. So we need to, so if we are going into aerospace industry, if we have a local big player, good. But if we don't, then we need to look broad and see who is the leading business in aerospace. Bring them in, and then develop a cluster, an aerospace cluster. And of course, to bring them in, we need to provide the right incentives. If that means we are giving incentives to the big players, well, we can't avoid that. So, Dr. Ida, it is evaluation, and number two, the need to have anchor players in the development of any new industries to help propel Malaysia to become a high-tech, high-value-added economy. Dr. Ida.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Daniel, any response from you?
Yes, it's quite tricky question on my side because equally shared by players equally. It depends, yeah. Equal doesn't mean that everybody got the same portion, yeah. It
Equal
should
is not
be.
fair, not necessarily fairness is not
It's
equal
not
to.
exactly. So that's come another question. What do they actually really want, right? Given that I mentioned about government does not have all information about the industry, they have very limited information. They need to be feed information, information from the industry, so that once the government knows, then they can give the incentives based on what you want, the industry wants, yeah. And then industry themselves, they have to understand what do they want and exact thing that they want, right? So they have really to make a proper planning, a proper design business strategies before they're applying for the incentives. Yeah, incentives is not something that free tickets. Yeah, it needs to be applied. It should be regulated in some sense, because we want to make sure that we are giving the incentives to the right people, to the right time, and to the right purpose. Right.
Yes.
So let's come back to evaluation, that what Prof. Dato mentioned just now. Evaluation is it matters, yeah, because even though the industry get the incentive, the government need to assess that, because the role of the government is to make sure that the welfare of the people has been addressed, to make sure that all is well kept, so that they're giving incentives, and there are spillover effects, multiplier effect to the economy, and it benefits not only for the industry but for the population as a whole. Yeah. So I think that's my response. Yeah.
Okay, we have come to towards the end. We have another 3 minutes, and I would like to invite each speaker for the last word. So I invite Dr. Daniel first. Your last word,
Right.
Dr. Daniel.
3 minutes, yeah.
One
Okay,
minute. 1 minute for you.
I try to
Another
make
1
it short.
minute for Dato.
Okay. All right. First of all, again, I just want to highlight on my last presentation about this SMART. Yeah, my acronym for smarter and manageable incentives. It must be that not only for the industries but also for the government. If let's say we have policymakers here, to make sure that we design the incentives just not only for the industry but also for the region. Yeah, we have to take into account the imbalances that happening in our country, regional imbalances that happening in our country, right? So once we have that, we know the incentive, we know which industry that we need to develop in what areas, so that we can develop there, and then we can help to improve the economic development. And again, we need to monitor all the incentives, not learn from past mistakes. What are the mistakes that we have committed in the previous years in giving incentives to the industry? Whether the industry really can benefit from that, and do the government really engage with the industry, and vice versa? And it might be something achievable. Yeah, what do we do? What do we want? Not to be too optimistic, or to be too what I call it, ambitious in making ambition, because of course we want to be a developed nation, right? But being a developed nation comes at another cost, right? In my case, let's say in my research, that even though we want to develop, we want to participate in global markets, but remember, all the things that we committed, there must be some cost that need to be considered, right? For example, previously we want to engage in TPPA, but now it's not materialized. It's good. Because from my research, we found that even though we are getting more value added in terms of generating our economy by participating in TPPA, but later on, it's not really good for our labor markets. We are not improving in terms of a skill acquisition by our population, but still remain dependent on foreign workers. Yeah, so that is unachievable. Realistic is realistic. Make sure that we have the capability to deliver. Not only for the government, also for the industry. They have all the access to the technology. They have the capability in terms of mindset, in terms of their skills. Yeah. So all this need to be addressed. And lastly, is timely. Make sure that the incentives deliver based on speed, agility, and flexibility, so that we can cater whatever the external factors that affect to our economy. We can make it fast in order to respond to whatever the condition that happened to our economy. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. John, last word from you. All the participants.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ida. This has been a very beautiful experience for me. Our audience has been particularly active with a lot of valuable pointers that they have thrown at us. And I think if I may sum up the crux of the presentation, I think there are two important players in competitiveness. Number one, businesses themselves. Both myself and Dr. Daniel said that competitiveness depends on the companies themselves. If they are more productive, then the nation collectively becomes competitive. And when we are competitive, then we prosper and we become wealthier. So I think much of the work that has to be shouldered will now fall on the private sector as the engine of growth. But having said that, we need to have a complementary role from the public sector, the government. The public service also has a role to play in, number one, providing the business environment. The public sector has to be efficient. It has to be business friendly. And so I think we should resurrect the Malaysia Incorporated concept. And so if the public service, the public sector is efficient and effective, then the private sector can be also efficient and effective in their operations, and they will then contribute to national competitiveness and to national prosperity. So it takes these two players to tango, the public sector and the private sector. And I think so far both have done a commendable job, but there is still more room to work harder in the future. Dr. Ida.
Okay. Thank you very much to both panelists. On behalf of Malaysia Productivity Corporation, we would like to thank Dr. John and also Dr. Daniel. And I think most that we would like to congratulate and thank you our attendees, which has been with us for 2 hours in this Saturday morning. Yeah, so I hope that we can meet again. So at this point of time, I would like to end the session, and stay safe, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.